Hello my beloved Ashen Ones, Streamer Mind is back in town, and today we're going to answer the question, can you beat Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1 while permatoxic? I know, everyone has been eager to know. World leaders have tried to find the answer for years now, but couldn't find anyone stupid enough to try it. Some say the whole debacle in Gaza started because they couldn't agree on who would actually attempt the run. But don't worry no more, my sons. Daddy Stream is here to give you the answer and finally bring world peace. But before we begin, I'll explain briefly how this mod works. There are 3 difficulty options, where the easiest consists in only the standard poison, and if you pick this option, you're a certified pussy and should never consider playing a video game ever again. The normal difficulty has the common toxic, but nobody wants to be just some normal dude, am I right guys? No sir, we want to be the main characters of our lives. Then we're left with the hard mode, which is obviously the one I picked because real men only like things that are
long and hard.
Thank you, Godfrey. This one inflicts the toxic dealt by NPCs, which is the worst type of toxic, I suppose. I suppose because I only have 10 intelligence, so I have no idea what they mean, but I see bigger numbers, and that's all I care about. I'm sure someone will explain what the hell this means in the comments. For the rest, this is just a standard Soul Level 1 run. Or so I thought. And now, let's begin this torture. This is Brittany, Brittany's evil twin sister. The reason you've never heard of her is because she's been taken as hostage by Disney for the past 30 years. After choosing the life ring for survival purposes, I soon got to work. I woke up from a drug-induced coma in the cemetery of Ass. I picked up the blue flask as improving our Estus as fast as possible will be important because as you can see, the life drain is pretty crazy. Especially at the beginning of the run as we have no way to mitigate the toxic effects. And for this challenge, it's a good thing that Dark Souls 3 has like a gazillion bonfires laying around. I picked up the shards before freeing our good old friend Gundyr. That's the best I could come up with, okay? The first thing I noticed was that during repose animations I wouldn't lose health, which is perfect for parable enemies like Gundyr. Unfortunately, also fucking up like I just did here in the footage could make a huge difference between life and death, as to beat this run we will have to mostly rely on high DPS while maintaining our health and Estus in check. Also, being too greedy can often lead to an unwanted path, which is something I had to learn the hard way. Getting used to having a limited amount of time to beat the boss was actually the hardest part of the early game. Anyways, once I managed to take care of my health and eventually not sucking ass sweat from a straw, I defeated Gundyr and was ready to move on to the actual game, and things already weren't looking too bright. After arriving at the shrine, I said hello to my AI girlfriend before lighting up 420 style. Then I managed to get the tree skip on my first try for real. I picked up the homeward boners, the shard and the silver serpent drink, redistributed my juice, and I effed off to Lothric, where I did the usual things you do when you get there. I got some gold pine resins, got some tits, used a pretty handy no-hit strategy to avoid the manager. Must have been the wind. After surviving a true London experience, I got the best weapon in the game, the broadsword, which is perfect because it's fast and deals decent damage. Got the Estus hard before making a run for my life and boning the hell out. I returned to Firelink to improve my Estus and to upgrade the broadsword to +1, returned to the high wall to test how long and how many Estus I would consume to reach Vord, trying to take as little damage possible during the parkour. On my first attempt, I reached the boss with 3 Estus and started the fight with 2, which was terrible, but could be improved. I used one of the only 2 resins I had and threw myself at him like the dirty girl I am. The damage was more than enough, but I ran out of Estus way too early and ended up getting frostbite before the final blow and got wrecked. So I decided to collect the rest of the shards in the area to upgrade the weapon so I wouldn't need the gold pine resin and wouldn't risk ending up wasting it like I did with the other one I had. Unfortunately, the remaining 2 shards needed were dropped by the 2 pussy of a man, which to me are actually the hardest enemies in the game. So instead of passing a good half an hour fighting those guys, I decided to get good with the run back to conserve as much Estus and health as possible. And improved I did. First I entered with 3, then I managed to enter with 4, but the thing I really hated about this fight was that Vord is the slowest MF and doesn't rush you, extending the time needed to actually start fighting. The problem was that I didn't have sufficient damage to kill him during his phase transition, resulting in a few embarrassing deaths. So the easiest way was to just waste the resin and go to town on him. After getting the banner from Grandma, I packed my things and took to the sky. And as soon as I landed, I picked up some souls, committed animal cruelty before making it safely to the bonfire, got my hands on the small leather shield, got the bone, picked up the shards and the titanite, parkoured through the area like a pro, lit up once again because I do have a problem, please send help, I'm not the same when I smoke, and actually got locked out of the bonfire because of these two funny lads. Got another titanite, upgraded my Estus once again as well as my weapon, collected the undead bone shards and Mortician's ashes before getting trolled by an elevator. I arrived at the Road of Sacrifices, into the Crucifixion Woods, picked up some actual drip, and arrived in Temu Blight Town to collect all the goodies. And since poison is a different status effect, it's stacked with my toxic, which made me a very happy boy. I put out the first fire, forgot to drink my milk, successfully reached the second fire, and continued my treasure hunt by picking up the Bone Hearts, the Dream Chaser's ashes, as well as the 2 large Titanites, and used them to upgrade to +4. I put out the third and last fire, and made it to the bonfire. I quickly returned to the woods, collected the Estus shard I missed, and tried having a go at the Crystal Sage. And it was so ass. In fact, it was so bad that it encouraged me to look for something to mitigate the toxic. And I learned that there is a chime that has Gentle Prayer as its weapon art in the first area of the game. All I had to do was find a gay rat? Well, that's odd. Where the hell am I supposed to find a gay rat? So I returned to the high wall of Lothric, got my hands on a key, and started asking the locals. Excuse me, fine sir, do you know where I can find a gay rat? But I found no answer to my questions, so I returned to Firelink to speak to my new friend and throw him a bone. Oh, Grey Rat. Duh! Unfortunately, to acquire the chime, one has to send Grey Rat to pillage the undead settlement. So I sent him on the hunt, but he won't come back until we defeat a boss. So I then reinforced my Estus, had a chat with Onion Bro, before getting cooked to perfection by Gordon Ramsay. Came back for revenge and got my hands on the Flynn's ring, which is perfect for me because I wasn't planning on wearing any clothes anytime soon. Then I reached the undead settlement, and I lost the footage of me making peace with our giant friend, so you'll have to take my word that I did. I arrived at the cursed Greatwood, which is also the name of my propagator, in case anybody was wondering. Even if my first try ended tragically, I could burst his nuts quicker than Stormy Daniels with Donald Trump, only taking me 2 hits to burst its bubbles. In second phase, I just aimed for his arm penis and collected my victory, and this was actually a massive win, as not only Grey Rat now would come back, meaning I could buy the chime for Gentle Prayer, which recovers 2 points of HP every second for about a minute, which doesn't sound a whole lot, but 2 is definitely better than 0 in my book. But now I could use the Transposing Kiln to transpose Vord's soul for Pontiff's left eye, which recovers HP after successive attacks. Even though I had a pretty substantial buff to both my damage and survivability, the Crystal Sage was still a pretty dangerous foe as he could easily one-shot me. The frenzy summons later in the fight made it exponentially worse, but after some trial and error, I managed to get it right. Once Big Fat Logan had been dealt with, I spent my cash on gold pine resins and hookers, got whipped by Logan's big fat mother, and finally reached my favorite area in the game. Because who doesn't like dogs? Everyone loves dogs. I love them more than anything in the world, especially when they magically teleport out of nowhere. That's my favorite thing that dogs can definitely do. I love dogs so much that I quit out at the opening door animation to spare their lives and not to spare my sanity. Because as I said, I love dogs. Now I could finally get my hands on another Estus shard. I then made the sad decision to touch a homeless man's underwear and woke up in Siberia with a kidney missing, but made the best out of a bad situation and picked up the large tits. I went back to church to experience my childhood trauma, got the bone heart in the graveyard, and survived a blast of napalm. Skipped all the enemies because who actually plays these games? Got pounded like a meatball, and obviously skipped the Lord Sword Ring as it would be as useful as a used Kleenex in a strip club, before being absolutely gangbanged by a bunch of priests. So, instead of reliving another one of my childhood traumas, I returned to the painting to get the slab for later. I decided to get it early because I knew it was going to be a huge pain in the ass, and I was in fact right. Once I finally made it to the bonfire, I killed the tree-looking enemy for the ladder to spawn and began the climb. After only 3 hours, I had finally reached the half point. Then I played some more Ladder Simulator 3 and finally collected my treasure. And then I convinced a crystal lizard that his life wasn't worth living after all and got a large titanite shard for it. I then got back to the cathedral and started biting off the giant's ankle for the large titanite shard, traded a firebomb with Pumperump for another large tit, and upgraded to +5. The rest of the large titanites needed for +6 were either behind Dancer or after the Abyss Watchers. Both were tough fights. I opted for Dancer as Abyss Watchers is the trickiest fight for me because having to pay attention to more than one enemy while keeping in check my Estus and degrading health was way too much for my smooth millennial brain. Also, Dancer has better rewards after it, so it felt like the right choice. How hard can it be to no-hitter with a +5 broadsword while toxic? Come on guys, we aren't casuals here. The main issue was the damage, obviously, dragging the fight way too long than it needs to be. But I had forgotten an ancient item used in the days of my forefathers. An item so powerful in SO1 runs that it is indeed the most important one of this entire challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, behold, the Raw Gem. That will increase the damage of our weapon while taking away its skillings, which is perfect for us since we can't level up. And it also takes away the extra AR from two-handing the weapon, meaning we could get the most out of the broadsword's moveset. Don't get me wrong though, even with the increase in power, I still will have to no-hit Dancer. Only now the fight would take much less time, and after a few tries, I was able to paint this beautiful picture. If you've come this far into the video, please consider subscribing to the channel as I'm trying to reach 12,000 subs by the end of April. Now, with the Dancer out of the picture, it was time to become OP.
NANI?! Fight! Pretty be careful.
With the doll in our hands, we could now explore the beautiful Irithyll. But duty before pleasure. So I took care of the crackhead crocodile on the bridge and received Pontiff's right eye, which increases damage with successive attacks. I arrived in the Church of Yorska and lit the fire, arrived safely in distant manor before treating me with some fine Estus soup, and barely survived the Shrine of Amana. Pontiff Sulyvahn can be one of the hardest bosses in the game if you don't know how to parry him. But if you do know how to, he becomes your little bitch. Don't believe me? Watch this. Hard to believe that was supposed to be the final boss of the actual game. After Pontiff was taken care of, I felt like I deserved a freebie, so I cheesed Aldrich. Because after all I've gone through up until now, it felt very good to go to town on a helpless devourer of gods that just stood there and took it like a Chad. Killing Aldrich rewarded me with the Sun Princess Ring, which is an important and crucial item for the run, because it regenerates health similarly to Gentle Prayer, only infinitely without needing to recast it every time. After these shenanigans, I traveled down to Irithyll's dirty king house, and I was ready to fight a giant pussy. I got the Storm Ruler and I quit out like a real chicken, and then started blasting Yhorm. Now that I had the 3 Lords of Cinders, it was time to move on to the endgame. First, I took a detour to the dungeon to pick up the Xanthus Ashes for infinite Goldpine resins. Dragonslayer Armour is one of my favorite bosses from the base game, and was another one of those fights all or nothing. Most if not all of his attacks were lethal, as he hits like a goddamn truck, especially his shield attack resulted in being quite annoying to react to and dodge. It's definitely the attack that I feared the most, as it tends to come out of nowhere like Randy Orton style. Another pain in the ass was obviously the elevator ride, which is one of the longest and slowest in the game, making me waste precious health and Estus in order to recover from the toxic. You have no idea how annoying it was, especially since I had to repeat this run back quite a few times before I could finally win the fight perfectly without any mistakes. The anorexic butterflies throwing their meatballs at me weren't helping either, but after a few tries I was able to come up with a somewhat consistent strategy. For most of the fight, I just danced around him like a pole, patiently waiting for him to do his move first, retaliating when safe and without getting greedy. Eventually he will stagger, which is when we put in some heavy damage and put those Pontiff rings to work. Also, his slam attacks could be taken advantage of for some good DPS. Watch out for the shield attack, which luckily I managed to react to in time. I kept on doing this until eventually he staggered and I was able to finish him off. Moving on to the archives, and as usual, it was good to be back. After eliminating Big Hat Logan again, I unlocked the elevator for the shortcut, picked up the bone shards, got the other elevator for the other shortcut, collected the Estus shard found on the rooftops, and got one-tapped by a crossbow hollow right when I was close to the finish line. Once I made it back, I avoided the 4 Geneva witnesses and made it safely to the elevator all in one piece. The 2 ambiguously incestuous bros were next on my to-do list, and once I was done with that, I was ready to fight them. The paraplegic brother is quite simple if you remember to just dodge to your right. Unfortunately though, they could easily kill me in one hit if I didn't pay attention to my position, meaning I would have to no-hit them as well. Great. Also, the elevator ride is even worse than DSA. As I said, the first phase isn't too bad, as it's easy to dodge his slashes and slams. Trying to minimize Estus consumption was crucial for survivability, but also because they tend to input read whenever you heal, and I wanted to avoid that at all costs. A one hit and dodge strategy was fine enough in terms of damage and safety. Once in second phase, it all consisted in avoiding the spells, They tend to teleport a lot more during phase 2, so I had to watch out for my stamina as well in order to dodge at any time notice. For the rest, it was very similar to phase 1. Once the crippled brother went down, it was easy to get rid of the virgin while he tried climbing on his brother's back. And finally, I had collected all of the 4 Lords of Cinders. And finally now, I could get to the final boss. The last of a long list of assholes that I needed to eliminate. How hard could this really be? Turns out it was much harder than expected. Things got so bad that I went out of my way to pick up another raw gem, got the club to +10 and tried with that, upping my defenses as much as possible in exchange for damage by wearing some armor and getting the Ring of Steel Protection +3 from the DLC. And it kinda got better until it didn't. It was definitely an improvement though, as I could stagger him more consistently, but the damage and DPS was simply ass. So there was no other way than to give a helping hand to Cirrus in defeating her OnlyFans stalker. Once that part of the quest was finished, all I had to do now was just to go outside and wait for the invader near the tombstone. I might have gotten something wrong, hold on, I'll check the wiki. Apparently, you can't get the invasion if you killed Pontiff already. So, no Dragonslayer axe, I guess? Or, well, through the magic of Cheat Engine, we can easily obtain one, and it's also +10. Please let me know in the comments how this entire run is not legit and I'm a filthy scrub for using cheats while I go and fight Cinders real quick. Alright guys, this is all I've got for today. To answer the question, yes, you can beat Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1 while permatoxic. And now that the balance has been brought back to the world, wars can now end. And I will go back to my cave filled with Relana's feet pictures and baby oil. If you enjoyed the video guys, leave a like, do all the YouTube stuff, and we will see each other in the next one.